Hey, great to be back. Glad to have my box in YouTube reaffirmed. But here I am. I just saw Wonder Woman, and that's what inspired me to get back on the horse, make another YouTube video. And I gotta say, it was a good movie. I am not sure that I would say that it's one of the best superhero movies ever. I'm not sure that I would go that far. But it has a lot of good things about it. It's definitely the best entry in the DC extended universe so far. Not that that's saying much, but it is really, it's a good movie. It has more humanity and more humility and, for lack of a better term, less testosterone than the previous three films, Man of Steel, Batman vs. Superman, Suicide Squad. They were all just, well, I'm tempted to say childish, but that's not quite the right word. Wonder Woman, I find, in this movie, her story is of a child becoming a woman. That's how I see it. This is the sort of movie where you can assign it a variety of archetypal quests, mythologies. For me, it is the story of adulthood, of finding your way to a mature understanding of your place in the world. Wonder Woman begins this film looking back on her life. We see her as a little girl on Paradise Island, alias Themyscira, and we follow her progress as she grows. She trains, she strains at the leash, and finally, destiny finds her as Steve Trevor crash lands on her isolated island, and she manages to escape, and with her mother's reluctant blessing, goes to the world of man to slay Ares, the root of all war, or so she thinks. There are going to be spoilers here. It's her mission is going to be more complicated, of course, than that. And one thing that I find interesting, there are initially two primary villains in this, and I'm going to go into spoiler territory, needless to say. Well, it's not needless to say. It's important that I say that there are spoilers in this review, so there you go. There are two primary antagonists in this film, ostensibly. At first, there's actually another one, but anyway. One is this female scientist, Dr. Poison, she's called, who's based on a very obscure Wonder Woman villain. And the other guy, I couldn't place him. I was never really that attentive to Wonder Woman's history. I never followed her that closely. But yeah, sorry, you see what I mean about my camera? It always craps out just when I... Well, that's why I don't post to YouTube very often. I need to get a new camera, but anyway, as I was saying, Wonder Woman tracks down this other villain, Ludendorff, and confronts him. And the thing about Ludendorff is he's actually based on a real guy. Wait, did I mention this before the camera crapped out? Anyway, I find that significant. He's not based on anyone from the comics. He's actually based on a historical figure, which is significant because though Diana and we see him as a stereotypical supervillain that she must defeat, in reality he's just another guy, albeit one who has super strength. We'll get to that. The point is, this is Diana's moment when she finally crosses the threshold from childhood to adulthood. She becomes a woman. She learns that humanity is complicated and you can't solve all the problems just by beating one boss monster. And she must ultimately resign herself. Even when she does actually beat the real villain, she has to face the fact that humanity's problems are within humanity, and that it truly is a never-ending battle, that she will have to go on fighting, maybe forever, but it's a fight worth doing, because even if she can't ever actually win, she can continue winning, and of course that is a moral for all of us. Like I said, this is a good movie. I'm not sure I'd call it the best superhero movie ever. If we're talking about period superhero movies, personally, I think I prefer Captain America, but it's still a very good movie, directed by Patty Jenkins, and yeah, it gets my seal of approval. for not only the, again, humility, humanity, and lack of testosterone that it brings to the DC Extended Universe, but for the variety of positive messages and interpretations that can be taken from it. Wonder Woman is one of those characters who is supposed to inspire the readers, the audience, and this movie does that very well. It's about inspiration. She is an inspirational figure because not only does she overcome her trials, she overcomes the revelation that her trials are not what she thought they were. She moves on. She learns to keep going in spite of the mission changing. It's not about really even her purpose. It's about herself, what kind of person she is, and what she has to do in a world that is more complicated than she anticipated. This movie, I think, creates a kind of standard. DC has a holy trinity, and so far they have expressed themselves in movie form to game-changing degrees. In 1979, Christopher Reeves was Superman. That was a game changer. In 1989, Michael Keaton was Batman. That changed the game. And now, finally, in 2017, we have perhaps the definitive Wonder Woman movie, at least the only one we've got so far, and definitely the best one to date, either on the big or small screen, with Gal Gadot as Wonder Woman, and that is great. So, we've got a great Superman movie, an iconic Batman movie, an iconic Wonder Woman movie. I don't know if this is going to carry on this forward momentum into the rest of the DC Extended Universe, but it's definitely a hopeful sign. And I guess when you get right down to it, that's all we can hope for. Hope. Only thing we have to fear is fear itself, and all we can really hope for is more hope. I don't know, I thought I could be deep there, but I guess that's all I'm going to say. If I forgot anything from the first time I talked about this, and it seemed like my camera crapped out, and I kept on talking and talking and talking, and I'm just trying to remember everything that I said, and I need to get a new camera. Anyway, later. One thing I don't get, okay, so Dr. Poison is obsessed with creating the ultimate mustard gas, which can melt gas masks. I don't know why it doesn't melt everything else, like clothes and wood and stuff, but apparently it somehow targets just gas masks, but it melts gas masks, and this is the one thing that she and Ludendorff are convinced will win the war. And here's one other thing I don't get. Okay, so Dr. Poison, while she's tinkering with this mustard gas, the ultimate mustard gas, and I know that mustard gas is a really serious, awful weapon in real life, but I've always found it difficult to take it seriously because it's mustard gas. That just sounds silly. Isn't that weird how so many really awful things in real life have silly names? That's another thing entirely. While she's working on this evil gas, which will destroy gas masks and people and apparently nothing else, meanwhile, she's also, in her spare time, worked on another little invention, just by and by, and she's apparently perfected it. She opens her junk drawer and shows it to Ludendorff. She says, oh, by the way, I happen to have made this little thingamajig. It might come in handy. You know, she snaps it open, he breathes it in, and it gives him super strength and enhanced reflexes. And this is just a passing thought. She says, yeah, I thought this might help. Maybe, if you get in a fight with a superhero, just, you just snap this open. It might. Anyway, let's get back to work. Oh, by the way, I've made a portable version of the super soldier serum. And she doesn't think this has wider applications? I mean, don't tell me she can't mass produce it. She's got an entire bowl full of these things, just sitting on her desk like candy. And this isn't a big deal to her? She just happened to have created a concoction so potent that it can allow an elderly man to shatter steel in his bare hands. I'm serious. Ludendorff, he breathes it in, and he crushes his gun without even meaning to. Are guns made of steel? No, not steel. Well, it's strong enough to shatter guns, which you would think would come in handy for, say, the soldiers on the field. But no, okay, it's a distance war, it's all about shooting. So I can understand that maybe close quarters combat isn't something that they're focusing on, but maybe they could give it to the workers, revitalize German industry. It seems like there's a lot of potential for application for having a means by which you can make people super strong at will for a limited time. Seriously, this is the problem with supervillains. They never see the forest for the trees. It's like that one mad scientist who turned Batman into a baby for that one time. Remember that Golden Age story, Batman becomes Bat Baby? It's like, oh yeah, this guy happened to create a laser that makes people young again, and he uses it to humiliate Batman. They were doing stuff like that all the time in the Golden Age, but nothing comes of it. I mean, this guy found the fountain of youth, and no one's gonna do anything with that. I might have talked about this before in one of my other videos. My memory is for crap, but seriously, it's only like the greatest invention of all time. No one's going to do anything with that. And Dr. Poison makes this stuff that can turn anyone into someone so powerful that they can almost outfight Wonder Woman hand to hand. She doesn't really seem to think it's all that important. It's like that student in high school who is so brilliant but doesn't seem to know how smart they are. Oh yeah, I found the last decimal of pi. What, you didn't? Oh well, yeah, I've got to concentrate on my home economics course. Alright. That's why they call it mad science, I guess. I also would have liked it if her departure from Themyscira had been a bit more dramatic. I mean, her mother spends her entire life trying to keep her domesticated and on the island, and it finally comes down to this midnight escapade where she leaves the island and her mom's like, oh fine, go, but by the way, you can never come back, and she says, meh. And here's another thing, what about the language issue? When Steve Trevor arrives on Themyscira, up to that point all the Amazons had been speaking English, and we just took it for granted that they were actually speaking ancient Greek or something, and that we were just hearing English. But then they start conversing in English, and he says, why can you speak English? And they say, oh, we can speak hundreds of languages. How can they speak English? Haven't they been isolated for centuries? Did they send Amazon scouts out to learn whatever new languages came up? Because I don't think they did. Did they? That wouldn't make sense, because then how would they not know about... Okay, magically they know English, and they know to speak it to him, even though they had no way of knowing that he was an English speaker when he arrives at the island. I mean, in fact, he was wearing a German uniform, so how did they know that he spoke English? Maybe he spoke first. I might be remembering it wrong. Maybe he said hi, and she just knew that he was speaking English from that one word that he said to her. And she speaks fluent English because she speaks hundreds of languages, and she was able to instantly identify what language he was speaking. But there are points in this movie when they do use subtitles, like when they meet this guy who makes a point about how he's capable of speaking all these different languages. They even use subtitles, and he goes through all these different languages, and they never bother having him speak a different language again. Even when they're in the middle of Germany going undercover, are they actually in Germany or one of the surrounding... Anyway, they're dealing with Germans, and the guy's he's pretending to be a limo driver. He doesn't bother speaking German, not that we see. He's speaking English with a German accent. So is Steve. And why bother establishing that this guy can speak multiple languages if he's not going to bother speaking German to the Germans? Why do all the Germans speak English with a German accent? Couldn't they have just had them speak German and use subtitles? Would that have been so difficult? It just, the language thing, that's really kind of weird in this movie, because everybody speaks English except when they want to demonstrate how they can speak other languages besides English. That's the only time. That's so weird. I mean, it's a little thing, but it's everywhere in the movie. The Amazons can speak fluent English because they can speak hundreds of languages, even ones that they shouldn't have had access to. And the Germans all speak English, presumably because they're actually speaking German and they're just being magically translated via Hollywood magic, so for our benefit. And the Amazons speak English before Steve Trevor arrives because, again, magical Hollywood translation. But there's no way. Why couldn't they have used subtitles? That was weird. Yeah.